Hey there, cinematics! If you want the full mind-blowing, gut-wrenching, action-packed saga of heroes and gods torn apart by tragedy and betrayal, you absolutely need to subscribe right now. Don't just settle for cutscene compilations or a quick wiki read. Here, we break down every twist, every epic battle, every emotional turning point from Injustice, Gods Among Us. Whether you're a hardcore DC fan or just love stories where morality isn't black and white, this is the channel where you get the complete experience. So hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join us as we witness a universe where even Superman can break. Our story opens in the heart of Metropolis, where the city's skyline gleams and hope shines brightest, until, in a single moment, everything is lost. The Joker, Gotham's madman, has crossed a line no one ever thought possible. With the help of Harley Quinn, he kidnaps Lois Lane, Superman's wife and the mother of his unborn child, and rigs a nightmarish plot. Through a mixture of kryptonite-laced scarecrow toxin and a nuclear bomb, the Joker tricks Superman into killing Lois with his own hands, believing he's fighting Doomsday. When Lois's heart stops, a hidden trigger detonates the bomb, leveling Metropolis and killing millions. The world is shattered. Superman's spirit is crushed, his grief beyond comprehension. Batman arrives too late to stop the carnage, finding Superman on his knees, broken. In a moment of pure rage, Superman confronts the Joker in a police interrogation room, and, despite Batman's pleas, drives his fist through the Joker's chest. The world watches as the Man of Steel becomes judge, jury, and executioner. The shockwaves of that moment change everything. Superman declares that no one, no villain, no tyrant, no government will ever again be allowed to harm innocents. He forms the Regime, a worldwide authoritarian force led by himself and some of the world's most powerful heroes. Wonder Woman stands at his side, seeing a chance to build a world of true order. Others, like Cyborg and Robin, Damian Wayne, join as well, convinced that force is the only answer to chaos. But not everyone agrees. Batman cannot condone Superman's rule by fear. He becomes the leader of the insurgency, a resistance of heroes and former friends fighting for free will, even in the face of overwhelming power. The Justice League is broken. Brothers and sisters in arms become enemies overnight. Flash is torn, his conscience battered by the things he's ordered to do. Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, sides with Superman, but Green Arrow, Black Canary, Huntress, and others join Batman in the shadows. As Superman's regime tightens its grip, the world becomes a police state. Villains are executed or imprisoned. Super prisons house anyone who resists, and entire nations are brought to heel. Even the gods are divided. Aquaman seeks to keep Atlantis neutral, but is drawn in by threats to his kingdom. Shazam, still a boy at heart, struggles with the regime's brutal tactics. When Superman kills Shazam for questioning his authority, the world is left in awe and terror. Batman knows he cannot win alone. Using a dimensional transporter, he pulls versions of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Aquaman, and others from a parallel universe, a world much like the one before the Joker's attack. These heroes arrive bewildered, only to find themselves in a world ruled by fear, where they are hunted as criminals and have to face darker versions of themselves and their friends. The battles are epic, stretching from Gotham's grimy rooftops to the halls of Atlantis, from Superman's sky-high prison to the remains of Metropolis. Batman's plans unfold in secret. The alternate heroes ally with the insurgency, hoping to restore balance. They must rescue key allies. Lex Luthor, who in this world is Superman's secret friend and insurgency supporter, and the original Harley Quinn, who finds new purpose as a chaotic but earnest resistance leader. Confrontations erupt. Flash faces his own failings, Green Lantern is forced to fight both his alternate self and his regrets. Aquaman must choose between Atlantis and the surface world. Wonder Woman's alternate self tries to talk down the regime's warrior queen, torn between love for Superman and the Amazon Code. Cyborg must face his own double, each struggling to define what a hero should be. But everything comes down to Batman versus Superman. A battle not just of fists, but of ideals. In the end, the parallel Superman is able to confront his broken counterpart, reminding him of what it means to be a symbol, not a tyrant. The original Superman is finally defeated and imprisoned, his regime brought to an end, but at a terrible cost. The world is left scarred, unsure if it can ever recover. In the aftermath, the insurgency is victorious but broken. Batman mourns the loss of so many friends. Superman, once the world's greatest hero, sits alone in a red-lit prison, haunted by the consequences of crossing the ultimate line. The surviving heroes vow to rebuild, knowing that power can never come without responsibility, and that hope must always be stronger than fear. And that, cinematics, is the tragic, explosive, and unforgettable journey of injustice. Gods among us. Every battle, every heartbreak, every twist that proves even gods can fall. If you want the full experience, don't forget to subscribe. Here, you don't just watch the legend, you live it. Film buddies. Every once in a while, a movie comes along that doesn't just entertain audiences, it changes the very DNA of the film industry and leaves its mark on generations. The journey from box office debut to cultural legend is never just about numbers or opening weekend records. It's a story of risk, reception, ripple effects, and the legacy that keeps growing long after the first credits roll. Tonight, let's pull back the curtain on how a single film's box office journey becomes an everlasting part of our movie-loving world. Imagine the anticipation. Premiere night, a packed theater, cameras flashing, stars mingling with fans, and a nervous director or producer somewhere in the wings, wondering if the film they've poured their heart and soul into will be a hit or a headline-making flop. For most movies, box office success is measured in ticket sales and dollars, maybe some awards. But for a select few, the opening becomes an earthquake, reshaping the whole landscape of cinema. From its very first screenings, this kind of movie turns into an event. Tickets sell out days, even weeks in advance. Newsreels and social media, or in earlier days, gossip columns and radio broadcasts, buzz with reports of lines stretching around the block, people camping out to snag a seat, and theaters running, showings late into the night just to keep up with demand. Sometimes the initial numbers are so staggering that they defy belief, breaking previous records, dwarfing the competition, and setting a new gold standard for success. In its own era, it might become the highest-grossing sound film, or perhaps even the top-earning movie of all time adjusted for inflation. But those numbers, as jaw-dropping as they are, only tell half the story. The real magic of a film's box office success is what happens after the first wave. Is it a one-hit wonder, or does it keep drawing in new fans? Does it spark a wave of imitators, or even an entire genre? The biggest movies don't just dominate. Their opening weekends, they become perennial favorites, returning to the big screen in special re-releases, drawing in new generations of moviegoers, and finding new life on home video, DVD, Blu-ray, and streaming platforms. The box office keeps climbing, sometimes quietly and steadily for decades, until the film's lifetime gross towers over nearly everything else, sometimes in the range of $1 billion or more, an amount that would have sounded like fantasy when the film was first released. But why does this happen? Why do some movies keep coming back, long after their initial run? The answer is in their ability to connect with audiences, with critics, and with the world. These films often tap into something universal, a longing for adventure, a yearning for hope, the thrill of true love, or the courage to face our fears. They don't just show us new worlds, They give us stories we want to revisit, lines we love to quote, and music we can't stop humming. Box office power like this inspires. Far more than just cash registers and sequel plans. It sparks a wave of creativity across the whole entertainment industry. Maybe it launches a flood of fairy tale adaptations, with studios racing to find the next great enchanted kingdom or unforgettable heroine. Maybe it sets the standard for an entire subgenre, whether it's superhero blockbusters, sci-fi epics, animated adventures, or heartfelt romances. The style, characters, and storytelling choices become the blueprint for years, sometimes decades. Future filmmakers study the film's camera work, its use of color and sound, its pacing and character arcs, hoping to recapture just a hint of that magic. These legacy movies don't just change the movies, they change the world around them. Merchandise explodes, toys, costumes, lunchboxes, soundtracks, posters, collectibles. For the first time, kids might be able to bring their favorite characters home, sing along with the songs, or imagine their own stories with dolls and action figures. Theme parks may spring up, or rides may be built that let fans step into their favorite scenes. The movie becomes a brand, a touchstone, a shorthand for wonder, excitement, or nostalgia. Internationally, these box office titans become true cultural ambassadors. They're dubbed into dozens of languages and played in theaters from New York to Nairobi, from London to Tokyo. In some countries, the film may be among the very first foreign or animated movies to reach mainstream screens, opening up new possibilities for what cinema can be. Stories emerge of children lining up in Paris, families in Brazil singing along to dubbed soundtracks, or audiences in Asia embracing characters as if they were their own folk heroes. In many cases, the film's imagery, lines, and songs become as universal as any fairy tale or myth, references that cross borders and generations. And that's just the beginning. The cultural impact of such a film is measured not only in tickets and toys, but in the imagination it sparks. Artists, musicians, writers, and filmmakers grow up dreaming of recreating that sense of awe. They cite the film as inspiration for their own careers, from Oscar-winning directors to animators just starting out. Decades later, documentaries and behind-the-scenes specials dissect what made the movie work, how the animation team achieved new heights, how the music was composed, how the cast brought timeless characters to life. Academics and fans alike write about its themes, its legacy, and its place in the history of film. For the company behind it, be it a legendary animation studio, a visionary director's production company, or a global media empire, the film's box office legacy becomes its cornerstone. Profits from one era fund the creation of new movies, new technologies, and sometimes even entire theme parks. The success proves to the world that animated features or fantasy adventures or any risky project can not only succeed, they can become the bedrock of an entire industry. The phrase "set the standard" isn't just marketing, it's reality. Every major release that follows is measured against the box office titan that came before. And for the fans, the legacy lives in every screening, every streaming marathon, every costume party or sing-along. Fans introduce their children to the movie, who introduce their own, turning movie night into a multi-generational ritual. Lines from the film become family jokes. Songs become lullabies. Heroes and villains become reference points for bravery, loyalty, kindness, and sometimes even a delicious bit of villainy. The story is retold, parodied, and paid homage to in everything from television to memes to fan fiction. Ultimately, the box office numbers become a badge of honor, but the legacy is something deeper. It's the emotional footprint left on millions, the way the movie shapes our dreams and imaginations. It's the spark that says, yes, stories matter, yes, dreams come true. That's why, film buddies, even decades after the initial premiere, some movies remain not just popular, but necessary. They remind us who we are, who we want to be, and what the magic of the movies is really all about. So, the next time you see headlines about another record-breaking opening, or you catch an old favorite playing for the 100th time on a streaming platform, remember, box office is just the beginning. The true legacy is written in our hearts, in our laughter, in the ways we retell and relive these stories. That's the real blockbuster, the one that lasts forever. Have you ever wondered if all that buzz around a blockbuster really paid off? Every time a movie breaks records for pre-sale tickets, has fans camping out for premieres, or fills the headlines with speculation, there's that million-dollar question. Did the hype actually deliver? Well, for the handful of true cinematic legends, the answer is a resounding yes. Sometimes in ways even the filmmakers never dreamed possible. The film's release wasn't just an opening, it was a seismic event. Critics who were once skeptical found themselves swept up in a wave of praise. Overnight, the movie wasn't just a hit with audiences, it became a darling of the press, the talk of Hollywood, and the standard by which all future animated, or fantasy, or adventure films would be measured. Reviewers called it everything from a marvel of storytelling to a triumph of artistry and heart. Newspapers and magazines printed stories about kids singing the songs, adults lining up around the block, and entire families returning for second, third, and fourth viewings. The critical acclaim wasn't just about the visuals or the novelty, it was about emotion. For the first time, animated characters weren't just funny or clever, they made people cry, gasp, and believe in fairy tales again. Seasoned reviewers, some of whom had never praised a cartoon in their careers, wrote that this film had moved the audience like nothing before. People talked about the chills they felt during certain scenes, the laughs that echoed through packed theaters, and the tears that welled up at the story's most poignant moments. Decades later, the movie continues to appear on critics' best-of-all-time lists, and its scenes are used in film schools as textbook examples of how to tug at the heartstrings. And if critical success wasn't enough, the commercial impact was downright revolutionary. Studios had long considered animation a financial risk, a sideshow to the real live-action dramas and comedies. But this movie's box office receipts proved, once and for all, that animated films could be blockbusters. Audiences didn't just buy tickets, they bought albums, books, dolls, and everything else the studio could license. The film became a fixture of pop culture, the kind of sensation that crosses borders, languages, and generations. Years later, its lifetime gross, often exceeding $1 billion when adjusted for inflation, makes it one of the most successful movies ever made. But more important than the numbers is what those numbers represent. Millions of people, young and old, finding something to love, something to carry with them long after the lights came up. The legacy was clear. The hype didn't just pay off, it changed everything. From that moment forward, animated films became a pillar of the industry. Studios greenlit new projects, hoping to capture even a bit of that magic. Artists, animators, and musicians dreamed of working on the next big hit. Audiences came to expect not just entertainment, but genuine emotion and artistry from every new release. But before any of that magic could reach the screen, there was an entirely different story unfolding behind the scenes. A story of risk, creativity, and a team determined to make the impossible possible. Pre-production and filming on a legendary movie are never as simple as just following a script. In fact, for this classic, the story started years before anyone saw a frame. It all began with a vision, a belief that movies could be more than spectacle, that they could be emotionally rich, visually dazzling, and unforgettable. The director or studio head behind this legend didn't choose their subject lightly. They searched for a story with heart, a tale that offered both grand adventure and intimate emotion, characters that could make audiences laugh and cry, and visuals that would linger in the mind long after the screen went dark. For some, like Walt Disney, it meant choosing a fairy tale that promised magic and danger, innocence and villainy, hope, and heartbreak. For others, it might have been a sci-fi odyssey, a sweeping romance, or a coming-of-age epic. But the heart of any classic isn't just in the story, it's in how the story is told. From the earliest days of pre-production, the creative team debated every detail. The script evolved constantly. Scenes were added and cut, characters rewritten, jokes and gags tested and tossed. In many legendary films, the balance between drama and comedy is hard-won. Maybe the original draft was too dark, and new scenes were added for warmth and humor. Or perhaps the story was too light, and deeper themes were woven in for resonance. With this film, the supporting characters, be they dwarfs, animals, robots, or sidekicks, became more than comic relief. They became the emotional center, providing not just laughs but loyalty, grief, and growth. Casting, too, was its own adventure. Sometimes the perfect star was found through months of auditions. Other times, a legendary performance came about almost by accident. Take the case of the young ingenue who would give voice to the story's heroine, a teenager with a unique sound discovered through a bit of luck or a friend's recommendation. Maybe she was only 18, with little professional experience, but the moment she stepped into the recording booth, she transformed. Her voice became inseparable from the character. The director or producer, always with an eye for magic, knew immediately. This was the one. Sometimes, to keep that magic unique, studios put limitations on future work, wanting the character's voice to remain one of a kind for all time. Other casting stories are the stuff of legend. The villain, for example, needed a performance that could send shivers down the spine. A veteran actor or actress might bring decades of experience to the part, using every trick in the book to find the perfect sound. Maybe they created the character's unforgettable rasp or cackle through a bit of offbeat ingenuity, removing false teeth, standing on tiptoe, or even recording in a darkened studio to channel the role's menace and power. The results speak for themselves. A villain who's not just scary but iconic, their voice echoing in nightmares and costume parties for generations. Once the cast is assembled and the script polished, the real work begins. Pre-production on. A legendary film is a swirling dance of art, music, design, and technology. Animators or set designers fill sketchbooks with endless concepts. Musicians try out melodies and harmonies, searching for that perfect, unforgettable song. Costumes are designed, tested, and sometimes completely reimagined. Special effects teams experiment with new technologies, multiplane cameras, practical, illusions, digital wizardry, pushing the limits of what film can do. Every step is a challenge. Money runs tight. Deadlines loom. Sometimes the crew doubts it can be done. The creative lead, whether it's Walt Disney, George Lucas, James Cameron, or someone else, must keep the faith, inspiring the team to believe that every brushstroke, every note, every late-night rewrite is worth it. Studio bosses might visit, anxious about the budget. Test screenings reveal which moments soar and which need a rework. The process is exhausting and exhilarating, a labor of love that requires not just talent, but endless resilience. Sometimes, the crew has to invent entirely new ways of making movies. Maybe they pioneer color processes, sound design, or computer animation. Maybe they spend hours studying how light falls through trees, or how water ripples in the moonlight, determined to get every detail right. For some scenes, animators act out movements themselves, dancing, leaping, even pretending to stumble or trip, so the finished film will feel alive and true. And in the end, when the last scene is painted, sung, filmed, or rendered, everyone waits. Will all that hard work pay off? Will audiences and critics see the magic? Will the hype prove justified? When it does, it feels like a dream come true, not just for the cast and crew, but for everyone who ever believed in the power of stories. That, film buddies, is the real legend behind any legendary film. The hype is just the beginning. The True reward is the magic we carry with us, the inspiration, the emotion, the proof that imagination can change the world, one movie at a time. Film buddies. Every once in a while, a movie comes along that doesn't just entertain audiences, it changes the very DNA of the film industry and leaves its mark on generations. The journey from box office debut to cultural legend is never just about numbers or opening weekend records. It's a story of risk, reception, ripple effects, and the legacy that keeps growing long after the first credits roll. Tonight, let's pull back the curtain on how a single film's box office journey becomes an everlasting part of our movie-loving world. Imagine the anticipation. Premiere night, a packed theater, cameras flashing, stars mingling with fans, and a nervous director or producer somewhere in the wings, wondering if the film they've poured their heart and soul into will be a hit or a headline-making flop. For most movies, box office success is measured in ticket sales and dollars, maybe some awards. But for a select few, the opening becomes an earthquake, reshaping the whole landscape of cinema. From its very first screenings, this kind of movie turns into an event. Tickets sell out days, even weeks in advance. Newsreels and social media, or in earlier days, gossip columns and radio broadcasts, buzz with reports of lines stretching around the block, people camping out to snag a seat, and theaters running, showings late into the night just to keep up with demand. Sometimes the initial numbers are so staggering that they defy belief, breaking previous records, dwarfing the competition, and setting a new gold standard for success. In its own era, it might become the highest-grossing sound film, or perhaps even the top-earning movie of all time adjusted for inflation. But those numbers, as jaw-dropping as they are, only tell half the story. The real magic of a film's box office success is what happens after the first wave. Is it a one-hit wonder, or does it keep drawing in new fans? Does it spark a wave of imitators, or even an entire genre? The biggest movies don't just dominate. Their opening weekends. They become perennial favorites, returning to the big screen in special re-releases, drawing in new generations of moviegoers, and finding new life on home video, DVD, Blu-ray, and streaming platforms. The box office keeps climbing, sometimes quietly and steadily for decades, until the film's lifetime gross towers over nearly everything else, sometimes in the range of $1 billion or more, an amount that would have sounded like fantasy when the film was first released. But why does this happen? Why do some movies keep coming back, long after their initial run? The answer is in their ability to connect, with audiences, with critics, and with the world. These films often tap into something universal, a longing for adventure, a yearning for hope, the thrill of true love, or the courage to face our fears. They don't just show us new worlds, they give us stories we want to revisit, lines we love to quote, and music we can't stop humming. Box office power like this inspires, far more than just cash registers and sequel plans. It sparks a wave of creativity across the whole entertainment industry. Maybe it launches a flood of fairy tale adaptations, with studios racing to find the next great enchanted kingdom or unforgettable heroine. Maybe it sets the standard for an entire subgenre, whether it's superhero blockbusters, sci-fi epics, animated adventures, or heartfelt romances. The style, characters, and storytelling choices become the blueprint for years, sometimes decades. Future filmmakers study the film's camera work, its use of color and sound, its pacing and character arcs, hoping to recapture just a hint of that magic. These legacy movies don't just change the movies, they change the world around them. Merchandise explodes, toys, costumes, lunchboxes, soundtracks, posters, collectibles. For the first time, kids might be able to bring their favorite characters home, sing along with the songs, or imagine their own stories with dolls and action figures. Theme parks may spring up, or rides may be built that let fans step into their favorite scenes. The movie becomes a brand, a touchstone, a shorthand for wonder, excitement, or nostalgia. Internationally, these box office titans become true cultural ambassadors. They're dubbed into dozens of languages and played in theaters from New York to Nairobi, from London to Tokyo. In some countries, the film may be among the very first foreign or animated movies to reach mainstream screens, opening up new possibilities for what cinema can be. Stories emerge of children lining up in Paris, families in Brazil singing along to dubbed soundtracks, or audiences in Asia embracing characters as if they were their own folk heroes. In many cases, the film's imagery, lines, and songs become as universal as any fairy tale or myth, references that cross borders and generations. And that's just the beginning. The cultural impact of such a film is measured not only in tickets and toys, but in the imagination it sparks. Artists, musicians, writers, and filmmakers grow up dreaming of recreating that sense of awe. They cite the film as inspiration for their own careers, from Oscar-winning directors to animators just starting out. Decades later, documentaries and behind-the-scenes specials dissect what made the movie work, how the animation team achieved new heights, how the music was composed, how the cast brought timeless characters to life. Academics and fans alike write about its themes, its legacy, and its place in the history of film. For the company behind it, be it a legendary animation studio, a visionary director's production company, or a global media empire, the film's box office legacy becomes its cornerstone. Profits from one era fund the creation of new movies, new technologies, and sometimes even entire theme parks. The success proves to the world that animated features or fantasy adventures or any risky project can not only succeed, they can become the bedrock of an entire industry. The phrase "set the standard" isn't just marketing, it's reality. Every major release that follows is measured against the box office titan that came before. And for the fans, the legacy lives in every screening, every streaming marathon, every costume party or sing-along. Fans introduce their children to the movie, who introduce their own, turning movie night into a multi-generational ritual. Lines from the film become family jokes. Songs become lullabies. Heroes and villains become reference points for bravery, loyalty, kindness, and sometimes even a delicious bit of villainy. The story is retold, parodied, and paid homage to in everything from television to memes to fan fiction. Ultimately, the box office numbers become a badge of honor, but the legacy is something deeper. It's the emotional footprint left on millions, the way the movie shapes our dreams and imaginations. It's the spark that says, yes, stories matter, yes, dreams come true. That's why, film buddies, even decades after the initial premiere, some movies remain not just popular, but necessary. They remind us who we are, who we want to be, and what the magic of the movies is really all about. So, the next time you see headlines about another record-breaking opening, or you catch an old favorite playing for the 100th time on a streaming platform, remember, box office is just the beginning. The true legacy is written in our hearts, in our laughter, in the ways we retell and relive these stories. That's the real blockbuster, the one that lasts forever. Let's take a trip behind the curtain, into the wild, colorful, sometimes chaotic world where your favorite animated movies are made. If you've ever wondered how hand-drawn sketches become the heart-thumping, eye-popping, laugh-out-loud wonders on screen, buckle up. The animation process is a mix of science, art, magic, and a little bit of movie-making madness. By the end of this journey, you'll never look at an animated film the same way again. Let's start at the very beginning. Imagination. Every great animated movie starts with a spark, a wild "what if?" whispered in a storyboard room, a doodle on a napkin, or a half-remembered fairy tale. Suddenly, the creative team is off and running, bouncing ideas back and forth, dreaming up characters, worlds, and stories nobody's ever seen before. Early designs are sometimes wacky. Maybe the hero was a talking fish before they were a princess, or the villain started out as a grumpy squirrel before turning into a menacing sorcerer. Nothing is too out there at this stage. Story meetings are full of laughter, heated debates, and gallons of coffee. Once the basic story and characters take shape, it's time for visual development, the moment when words become sketches. Artists fill entire walls with concept art, color palettes, costume ideas, wild landscapes, and even close-ups of how the hero's hair might bounce or the villain's cape should swirl. Some drawings make everyone burst out laughing, others get a hush of awe. The best ones go up on the inspiration board, the heart and soul of the movie's look. But wait, before we get to the animation magic, let's talk about movement. Characters aren't truly alive until they move like real creatures. This is where the process called rotoscoping swoops in. Back in the day, studios would hire actors and dancers, dress them in funny costumes, and film every twirl, leap, or even a dramatic hand wave. Animators would study these films, frame by frame, tracing over the actors to give animated characters weight, grace, and all the quirks of real life. It's why princesses glide so elegantly and heroes dodge, duck, and dive with such convincing realism. It's movie science in action. Now, those reference films don't just help with walking and talking, they inspire emotion. Ever notice how an animated character's heartbreak or joy feels so real? That's because artists don't just trace, they act. Sometimes the animators themselves leap around the studio, mimicking scenes, making faces in mirrors, or trying to nail the perfect "oh no" expression. If you've ever walked in on an animator pretending to sob or roar with laughter in an empty room, you've witnessed the secret sauce. But what about the world these characters live in? Here's where the background artists steal the show. For many classics, artists turn to European storybooks for inspiration: misty forests, twisted castles, glowing cottages, and starry night skies. Every background is a work of art on its own. Some studios experimented with watercolors, others with bold acrylics or gouache, all to get that dreamy, layered storybook feel. There were sometimes debates. Should the forest be spooky or magical? Should the castle look inviting or intimidating? Every brushstroke, every splash of color is argued over and obsessed about. It's a painter's paradise, and sometimes a painter's nightmare. But here comes the big leap: depth. Early animated films could feel flat, like a moving painting. To change that, studios invented the multiplane camera. Imagine layers of glass stacked on top of each other, each with a different part of the scene painted on it. By moving these layers at different speeds, filmmakers created the illusion of swooping through a real 3D world. It was jaw-dropping in its day and still looks incredible. That magical camera move through the forest? Pure multiplane magic, film buddies. Of course, all this innovation didn't come easy. The animation process was grueling. Artists sometimes worked through the night, their desks surrounded by half-eaten sandwiches and crumpled sketches. Stories from the Golden Age tell of animators sleeping under their drawing boards, living off coffee and sheer stubbornness. Studios flirted with bankruptcy more than once. Every brushstroke was a gamble, every scene a leap of faith. And then there were the paints. Did you know the original color palettes just couldn't cut it for rain, glass, or sparkles? So artists invented new paints on the spot. They mixed pigments, experimented with layering, and tested their effects under different lighting. Some effects were so tricky, like the shimmer on water or the gleam of a magic apple, that entire teams devoted weeks to getting them just right. And don't forget the special effects crew. Want realistic water droplets? Try filming real splashes and studying them for weeks. Want lightning or smoke? That's hand-drawn, frame by painstaking frame. And when it comes to magic, spells, sparkles, swirling curses, that's a blend of chemistry, artistry, and sometimes just pure guesswork. Every successful shot is a tiny miracle. But none of this would matter without the cast of characters bringing the story to life. Casting in animation is its own adventure. Directors and producers listen to hundreds of voices, actors, singers, even the occasional radio announcer or local stage star. Sometimes, a voice is discovered by accident, a friend of a friend, or someone just goofing around in the hallway. The moment that perfect voice is found, everyone knows. This is the hero, the villain, the comic relief. Some actors become so linked to their roles that they're forbidden from using that voice anywhere else just to keep the magic special. And once the cast is set, the real fun begins. Recording lines, singing songs, and improvising new jokes in the booth. Animators love to sneak into recording sessions, sketching faces, hand gestures, and all the little quirks that make a character unique. The synergy between actor and artist is electric. It's where the magic jumps off the page. The process is long, sometimes years in the making. There are moments of panic, months of frustration, and more than a few last-minute miracles. Sometimes, a whole sequence is redrawn days before the movie ships. Sometimes, a single frame, just one little smile, tear, or wink, takes weeks to perfect. But when it all comes together, something astonishing happens. An animated film is born, and the world gets a new classic. When the lights go down and the first frames flicker on screen, all the sleepless nights, wild experiments, and wild guesses melt away. Audiences gasp at the beauty, giggle at the jokes, and get swept away by the emotion. All that backbreaking work, every new paint, every camera trick, every acting lesson, has paid off in the only way that really matters. The story lives, and the characters leap off the screen into movie history. That's the real secret of animation, film buddies. It's not just about drawing or technology. It's about never giving up, about trusting the process, and about pouring every drop of love, humor, and imagination into the work. The hurdles, the hacks, the happy accidents, they're all part of the magic recipe. The next time you watch your favorite animated movie, remember, every twirl of a dress, every wink, every tear is the result of 1,000 creative risks and 1,000,000 tiny victories. If you love stories like this, if you want to keep exploring the wonders of movie making, the secrets behind the scenes, and the legends who bring our dreams to life, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Every week, we'll bring you more untold tales, artist spotlights, fun facts, and the kind of behind-the-scenes magic that turns movie fans into lifelong film buddies. So, until next time, keep imagining, keep laughing, and keep believing in the power of animated dreams. There's always more movie magic just around the corner. See you there, and don't forget to subscribe for your ticket to every adventure. Have you ever wondered what really goes on behind the scenes of your favorite movies? Whether it's an animated fairy tale, a superhero showdown, a pulse-pounding thriller, or a sweeping historical romance, every movie starts the same way, with a wild idea and a dream to make something unforgettable. But how do we get from that first spark of inspiration to the blockbuster, cult classic, or hidden gem we love? Let's take a trip into the wonderful, unpredictable world of movie making. The journey that turns a script into pure silver screen. Magic. It all starts with a question. Sometimes late at night, sometimes over coffee, sometimes scribbled on a napkin or texted at 2 a.m. What if? What if a toy could come to life? What if two strangers swapped lives for a day? What if the world ended tomorrow? The possibilities are endless, and the more impossible the idea sounds, the better. Once the story spark catches fire, writers huddle over laptops, whiteboards, and notebooks, weaving together plots, characters, and twists that will keep us on the edge of our seats. Draft after draft is written, scenes get swapped, jokes added, epic moments rewritten, and sometimes the movie you see at the end is completely different from the one that started it all. But a script is just the beginning. Next, it's time for the creative team to assemble. Producers hunt for directors, studios, and maybe even some deep-pocketed investors brave enough to roll the dice on a new vision. Directors bring their own ideas, style, and sometimes wild quirks to the table. Ever heard of a director who only wears red socks on set? It happens. Casting directors get to work, scouring the globe for just the right faces and voices. Sometimes it's an A-list star. Sometimes it's a total newcomer who blows everyone away in the audition room. Casting is its own kind of movie magic. Iconic roles have been decided by a single look, a perfect line read, or even a chance encounter in a coffee shop. Some actors land their parts after hundreds of auditions. Others get picked because the director saw them in a play, a TV show, or even a viral YouTube video. Chemistry reads are crucial. Sometimes the two leads meet for the first time and, boom, you can see the sparks fly or sometimes fizzle. Directors and producers watch, holding their breath because they know, if the cast doesn't work, the whole movie falls flat. Then comes the mountain-moving task of pre-production. The team scouts for locations. Should the epic battle happen in the deserts of Morocco, the streets of New York, or a soundstage in Burbank? Designers build worlds from the ground up, futuristic cities, haunted mansions, alien planets, or the perfectly ordinary living room where something extraordinary will happen. Costumers start sketching. Think superhero capes, 18th century ball gowns, battered leather jackets, or space armor. Prop masters fill warehouses with gadgets, furniture, and even fake food that looks so real you'll get hungry just watching. But wait, what if the world doesn't exist yet? Enter the digital wizards. Visual effects teams and CGI geniuses who can summon dragons, build planets, or de-age an actor 40 years. Meanwhile, composers are working on melodies that will make your heart race or your eyes water. Choreographers invent fight scenes and dances. Stunt coordinators figure out how to crash cars or swing from skyscrapers safely. And storyboards? Imagine a comic book version of the whole movie, panel by panel, to make sure every explosion, pratfall, and swoon lands just right. And now, it's time to shoot. The film set is where movie magic becomes reality, and let's be honest, it's rarely as glamorous as it looks on screen. Imagine 100 people running around at 4 a.m., rain machines blasting, wind fans howling, everyone shivering while the script calls for summer. Directors shout through megaphones. Actors wait for hours, then nail their line in one take, or need 30. Someone's always fixing a light, a boom mic dips into frame, and someone else is running for more coffee. Unexpected things happen, often. Sometimes animals refuse to cooperate. Sometimes the weather goes from sun to blizzard in 10 minutes. Props break, costumes rip, and sometimes a whole day of shooting gets scrapped because a plane flew overhead at the wrong time. But this is where legends are born. That fight scene you love? It took a week of rehearsals and 12 hours of filming, plus more than one bruised shin. That teary close-up. Maybe it happened after midnight when everyone was exhausted, and the director played the movie's theme song just off camera to bring the emotion home. There's improvisation. 2. Actors ad-lib lines that become instantly quotable. Directors swap out whole scenes on the fly, or someone on set has a brilliant idea nobody saw coming. Movie history is packed with happy accidents, unexpected moments that change the tone, the plot, or even the ending. Some of your favorite lines or scenes were never in the script at all. For animated and visual effects-heavy films, the action moves from set to screen to studio and back again. Animators and VFX teams labor for months or even years to craft explosions, monsters, spaceships, or talking animals that blend seamlessly with live action. They tweak every detail: the way fur ripples, how light bounces off chrome, the exact shape of a dragon's shadow on a medieval castle. For musicals, sound engineers mix every note, and Foley artists create footsteps, creaking doors, and all those little sounds that make a movie world feel real. Meanwhile, editors are in a dark room, slicing and dicing film, or these days, bytes and pixels, searching for the perfect cut. Maybe the original ending didn't land, so they try another. Maybe the movie needs a new scene, so the cast is called back for reshoots. It's a puzzle with hundreds of pieces and everyone has to fit. Music ties it all together. Sometimes, a film's score is composed after the last scene is shot. Other times, the music inspires whole scenes. Composers and musicians pour their hearts into every note, knowing that the right melody can make the difference between a movie we forget and one we'll love forever. Some songs are so good, they win Oscars and become part of our lives. Finally, after months or years of hard work, the film is finished. There's a world premiere, sometimes glitzy, sometimes surprisingly intimate. Critics file their reviews, and the world gets to decide. Is it a hit, a flop, or the kind of movie people will talk about for generations? Sometimes, movies that bomb at first find new life as cult classics. Others break records and set the bar for what comes next. But whatever the outcome, every movie has a legacy. Behind every credit, every award, every viral scene is an army of dreamers. Writers, builders, actors, designers, techies, and more, who put everything on the line to create a story from nothing. Some movies change the industry with new techniques. Some create beloved characters and unforgettable worlds. Some inspire new generations to pick up a camera, write a script, or chase a wild dream. And you know what, film buddies? Every time you buy a ticket, stream a new release, or sit down with popcorn and your favorite flick, you're part of that legacy. You keep the magic alive. Every sequel, remake, and hidden Easter egg is a thank you for your laughter, your tears, and your cheers. If you've loved this peek behind the scenes and you want to keep riding shotgun on the wild journey from script to screen, hit that subscribe button. Every week, we'll go even deeper, sharing more wild stories, insider secrets, and creative hacks from every corner of movie making. From Hollywood blockbusters to indie miracles, we'll show you how the magic happens and how every movie is its own wild adventure. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep watching, and keep believing that the next great story could be just one what if away. This is your Backstage Pass, film buddies. Thanks for joining, and don't forget to subscribe for more movie magic every single week. Film buddies. If you've ever wished you could sneak into a movie studio and see what really goes on when the cameras aren't rolling, you're in for a treat. Every movie, from animated classics to superhero blockbusters, comes with a suitcase, full of hilarious, quirky, and sometimes downright unbelievable behind-the-scenes stories. Sometimes the magic doesn't just happen on screen, it happens in the chaos, mishaps, and lightbulb moments that unfold before action is ever shouted. Let's start with the wild world of naming characters. Something you might think is simple, but oh, you'd be wrong. In the earliest drafts of many movies, characters go through a parade of names that range from clever to cringeworthy. Take the Seven Dwarfs, for instance. Sure, we know and love Grumpy, Doc, Bashful, Sleepy, Happy, Sneezy, and Dopey. But at one point, the creative team considered names like Awful, Biggie Wiggy, Dirty, Cranky, Flabby, Jumpy, Snoopy, and even Shifty. Can you imagine? Picture the dramatic moment when Awful saves the day or Biggie Wiggy bursts into song. In live-action films, the same thing happens. Heroes almost called Max Power, villains nearly dubbed Dr. Evilish, and love interests, with names that get the whole writing staff giggling. But wait, sometimes it's not just names that change. Whole scenes and sequences get created, debated, and sometimes left on the cutting room floor. In the world of movie making, not every idea makes it into the final product. But oh, the gems that nearly did. Animated films are notorious for this. There might be an elaborate musical number about dwarfs eating soup with wild, slapstick gags, or a tender montage of characters building something together. Maybe a bed, a spaceship, or a fort in the woods. In live-action flicks, you might miss out on a car chase that took weeks to film, or a love scene rewritten 3 times before it vanished altogether. The best part? Some of these lost scenes don't stay lost forever. Studios love to treat fans with bonus features on DVD, Blu-ray, or streaming releases, giving us deleted scenes, rough storyboards, or even full-blown musical numbers that didn't quite make the final cut. Sometimes these deleted moments become fan favorites, quoted and referenced just as much as the real thing. Die-hard fans have entire debates over which should-have-been scene was the best. And it's not just scenes. Sometimes even characters come and go like guests at a party. Many movies start with a supporting cast twice as big as what you see on screen. Maybe a wisecracking robot sidekick or a loyal pet goat got axed in rewrite number 12. Or maybe there was originally a rival hero, a nosy neighbor, or a trio of troublemaking squirrels who just didn't fit the story in the end. If you look closely at concept art or early scripts, you'll spot these phantom characters. And sometimes, if you're lucky, they pop up as Easter eggs or background cameos. Speaking of cameos, did you know directors, writers, or even crew members often sneak themselves into movies? It's true. Alfred Hitchcock famously appeared in nearly all his films. Stan Lee made his Marvel cameos legendary. Sometimes the voice of the hero's mother is the director's assistant, or the villain's evil laugh is a sound engineer goofing off between takes. Crew dogs, family members, and favorite baristas from the local coffee shop have all been immortalized in blink-and-you'll-miss-it moments. But let's not forget the wild inventions and on-set improvisations that become legends in their own right. Ever notice a character's strange hat, an oddly shaped prop, or a gadget that seems to come out of nowhere? Sometimes these are born out of last-minute panic or genius. Maybe the original set piece broke, so the props team duct taped together a new one from random bits found in the studio closet. Or the actors decided to add a new catchphrase or dance move in the middle of a take. Sometimes the most iconic moments in film history were completely improvised. Think Harrison Ford's famous "shoot" in Raiders of the Lost Ark, or Robert Downey Jr.'s snarky snacks in the Marvel films. Sound is another playground for creative chaos. The noise of a spaceship might be a slowed-down recording of an electric razor. Monster roars? Maybe it's a mix of a tiger's growl, a baby's cry, and the sound designer's own voice in the shower. For epic scenes, like a thunderstorm or a stampede, teams might stamp on gravel, snap celery, or shake metal sheets to build the perfect soundscape. Every squeak, bang, and crash is its own mini-movie, with Foley artists acting out scenes in a studio, often in fits of laughter. Let's talk wardrobe. Movie costumes often have secret superpowers or super problems. Sometimes an actor's heroic armor is just foam and duct tape painted gold. Or that elegant ball gown, it might be held together by 20 safety pins and 3 crew members, just out of frame. In action films, stunt doubles' shoes are painted to look like bare feet, and in sci-fi movies, the spacesuit gloves might be dishwashing gloves with LED lights. Sometimes actors improvise fixes themselves, using gaffer tape, double-sided sticky pads, or even staplers to keep their outfits together until cut is called. Food scenes are a world unto themselves. That perfect pie or roast might be made of painted foam and glue, and the drink that looks like fine wine, grape juice every time. For scenes that require multiple takes, props are constantly replaced. And sometimes actors eat so many slices of cake or bites of spaghetti that they vow never to touch it again. The best part? Food stylists are real-life wizards, using hidden tricks like mashed potatoes for ice cream or clear gelatin to make drinks look cold. And oh, the unexpected on-set disasters. rain machines suddenly flooding the set, animals that decide not to act on cue, a squirrel who steals the lead actor's lunch. There are stories of entire props going missing right before a big scene, of power outages at the worst possible moment, or of an extra accidentally wandering into frame, only to become a meme decades later. Let's not forget the Easter eggs planted by mischievous artists and directors. Maybe there's a hidden reference to another movie, a character's name scribbled on a chalkboard, or a subtle nod to a favorite band. Some movies have entire subplots running in the background, visible only if you watch closely. Animators and set designers love sneaking in their initials, birthdays, or in-jokes for sharp-eyed fans. And then there's the technology. Sometimes movies break new ground just by solving a crazy problem. Maybe inventing new paints for more vibrant colors, building a custom camera rig for a never-before-seen shot, or creating software that would become standard in the industry. Maybe the rain was just milk poured through a shower head, or a massive crowd scene was achieved by dressing up 5 extras in 20 different costumes. Filmmakers love to tinker, tweak, and hack their way to greatness. And of course, sometimes what's left on the cutting room floor turns out to be pure gold. Years later, studios dig up lost footage, alternate takes, or blooper reels that reveal just how much fun, or chaos, went into making the movie. Fans eat it up, swapping stories online and creating new legends from forgotten film reels. So, the next time you settle in for movie night, remember, behind every perfect moment on screen, there are 1,000 imperfect, hilarious, and downright brilliant moments that nobody planned. From last-minute script changes to costume fails, from Awful the Dwarf to surprise crew cameos, the story behind the story is always bigger, weirder, and more wonderful than you can imagine. And hey, if you love this kind of trivia, if you want more juicy, giggle-worthy, or jaw-dropping movie facts, make sure to subscribe. Every week, we'll share more secrets, goofs, and hidden gems from the world's most beloved films. You'll get your backstage pass to the magic, the mayhem, and the mischief that makes movie-making the wildest ride in entertainment. So keep your eyes peeled, film buddies. The next behind-the-scenes legend is always just one frame, or one deleted. Scene away. Don't forget to subscribe for more movie secrets, stories, and surprises every single week. If you really want to know how much impact a movie can have, just look at the way it echoes through the years. Tonight, we're peeling back the layers on cultural resonance. What happens when a story isn't just a hit, but becomes a part of who we are, what we dream, and even how the world makes art. Some movies don't just set box office records, they become the blueprint for entire genres, the spark for debate, the stuff of legends, memes, and endless reimaginings. Let's begin with one of the most powerful ideas in movie history, the archetype. In fairy tales and animated classics, the Disney princess ideal is instantly recognizable: kindness, courage, a touch of magic, and a dreamer's heart. But this isn't just about tiaras and castles. The princess archetype, in its earliest and purest form, became a cultural anchor, defining what it meant to hope for something better, to sing in the face of trouble, and to believe in happy endings. It's no exaggeration to say that this template has shaped not just animation, but children's literature, TV, stage musicals, and even the way entire generations play, dress, and imagine themselves. The princess model is endlessly adaptable. Over the decades, we've seen it reinterpreted for new times. Sometimes gentle, sometimes feisty, sometimes longing to escape, sometimes eager to rule. Every new spin on the character, from rebellious warriors to reluctant heroines, traces its roots to that original vision. The cultural impact is massive. Costume aisles every Halloween, themed birthday parties, dance recitals, and an industry of dolls, books, and merchandise that makes billions each year. Disney Princess is not just a label, but a phenomenon that crosses borders, languages, and traditions. But cultural resonance doesn't stop with admiration. It thrives on remixing, parody, and reimagining. From the earliest days, movies that break through the public imagination get referenced, spoofed, and celebrated everywhere. Think of how many films, TV episodes, and even commercials have played with the idea of a poisoned apple, an evil stepmother, or a kiss that breaks a spell. Comedy shows put their own spin on iconic scenes. Artists reinterpret characters in graffiti, fashion, and even political cartoons. Animated shows wink at the classics in sly ways, and writers pay homage with clever twists on famous tropes. On the internet, memes explode. The mirror on the wall becomes the world's sassiest judge, while woodland creatures helping with chores are played for both laughs and awes. Then there are the endless reimaginings and homages. Stage musicals reinvent the tale for new audiences. Novels retell it from the villain's point of view. Fan art and cosplay breathe new life into every dress, prop, and moment. Movie studios across the globe take inspiration, sometimes as loving tribute, sometimes as bold reinvention. The result is a tapestry of cultural references, a shared language that connects fans everywhere. If you've ever heard someone say, "Someday my prince will come," "Fairest of them all," or "Whistle while you work," you're part of that global chorus. But perhaps the most lasting influence is on the animation industry itself. Before the arrival of the fairy tale epic, animated features were short, silly, and considered just for kids. All that changed overnight. Suddenly, studios saw that animated films could be real art, capable of telling deep, emotional stories, moving audiences to tears, and pushing technical boundaries. New studios sprang up. Animators became celebrities. Careers were made and lost on the ability to create living, breathing worlds from pencil, ink, and celluloid. The film's influence rippled through Hollywood and beyond. Techniques invented for one movie, like multiplane cameras, innovative. Sound design and lifelike character animation became industry standards. Storytelling changed too. No longer was it enough to have a simple hero and villain. Now, movies needed character arcs, emotional depth, songs that mattered, and worlds you could get lost in. The bar was raised for everyone, from rival studios to filmmakers in other genres. The academic world took notice too. Critics, historians, and media scholars have spent decades studying breakthrough movies as artifacts of their time and as living works of art. Whole books have been written about how they broke ground in gender roles, both praised for giving, heroines' agency, and critiqued for sometimes reinforcing old-fashioned ideas. Was the princess a role model of kindness and perseverance, or a relic of a time when waiting for rescue was the only path open? Academics debate these questions in classrooms, journals, and panels, fueling new interpretations for every generation. Technology gets its own spotlight in the story of cultural resonance. The breakthroughs required to make an epic animated film, from painting techniques to color processing, from voice acting to sound mixing, paved the way for everything that came after. Some of today's biggest blockbuster franchises and streaming series owe their existence to a handful of pioneers who believed you could make audiences feel with just paint and song. And let's not overlook the debates. The same movies that launch millions of dreams also spark a million conversations. Fans, critics, and creators argue passionately about gender and innocence, about agency and destiny. Is the message of the classic tale empowering or limiting? How have new adaptations updated the story for modern values? What do kids really take away from the happily ever after? These debates are a sign of life, the proof that movies matter and that their meanings evolve along with us. In classrooms, film schools, and living rooms, these conversations are more relevant than ever. Teachers use classic films to spark discussions about hope, jealousy, and the nature of good and evil. Filmmakers cite them as inspiration for character design, world building, and even business models. Fans turn every new release into a communal experience, sharing reactions, analyzing symbols, and keeping the conversation going for years. And this brings us to the film's ultimate legacy, its place as a cornerstone of the genre, the movie that made everything after possible. The life lessons embedded in its story are simple but powerful. Kindness matters. Hope is worth holding on to, even when the world seems stacked against you. Vanity and envy destroy more than just the villain. They threaten the happiness of everyone around them. Friendship, forgiveness, and courage are the real magic that saves the day. Let's pause and think about what that really means. Every time a new fairy tale is told, every time a young viewer learns about loyalty or bravery, the roots stretch back to the original. When families gather for movie night and kids dress up as princesses or adventurers, the echoes of that first story are everywhere. The most valuable lesson is that we all have a little hero and a little villain inside us. The choice to be kind, to hope, to forgive, is one we make every day. For the animation industry, the film's legacy is nothing short of foundational. Studios from Pixar to DreamWorks to the latest indie animators all trace their lineage back to the moment the world believed that cartoons could be cinema and cinema could be anything. The same spirit of innovation drives each new generation, always asking, how can we do it better? How can we make the audience feel something real? The impact stretches beyond the screen. The music is played in concert halls, the art is hung in galleries, and the characters march in parades and festivals worldwide. Some of the world's most famous landmarks, castles, parks, museums, feature homages to the story. New technologies, VR, AR, interactive games, keep reimagining the magic for each era. Academics and critics will keep debating. Parents and teachers will keep interpreting. Creators will keep remixing, parodying, and paying homage. But through it all, the core message remains. The stories that resonate are the ones that dare us to hope, to dream, and to reach for a better world. So, film buddies, when you think about the cultural resonance of a movie, think of it as a wave, one that starts with a handful of artists and dreamers, crests in theaters and living rooms, and then flows out into every corner of our lives. The best movies give us more than entertainment. They give us something to aspire to question, to celebrate. And as we wrap up tonight's epic journey, let's circle back to where we began. The lasting impression of a film that changed the world. The ultimate fairy tale movie isn't just a story about a lost princess or a triumph over evil. It's a reminder that stories themselves are magic. They outlive their creators. They adapt and grow with each generation, and they teach us what it means to be human. If you take away nothing else, remember the value of kindness and hope, the dangers of envy and vanity, the power of friendship and forgiveness. The real magic is in the choices we make, the people we love, and the stories we keep alive. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, Film Buddies. If you're hungry for more movie wisdom, behind-the-scenes secrets, and cultural insights, make sure to subscribe. Every week, we'll keep celebrating the films that change the world and unpacking what they really mean for all of us.